when I give the message. I'll put it back down. And a couple of days ago, my wife and I were watching TV, and there was a wonderful interview with someone that we know as a camp counselor of Jane's, and someone that I'm very familiar with. I studied his books and brought him to Florida as a scholar in residence. His name was Daniel Matt, who literally took on the task sponsored by the Prisker family of Chicago to translate the Zohar into English. And if you want to buy it, it costs $700. I'm willing to a present if you want to give it to me, Bobby. And what's interesting about this is that he's a brilliant guy, so humble, but he said something beyond all the brilliance. What he basically said is, one of the goals of the Zohar, specifically in mysticism and Kabbalah in general, is to recognize the holiness in the everyday. That's the spirit that I'm offering this message this evening. Over 38 million Americans, 11.8%, live in households that struggle against food insecurity or lack of access to affordable, nutritious diet. This represents 9% increase since 2019. Children, 1 in 7, 14.8% households with children, could not buy enough food for their families, considerably higher than the rate for households without children, which is 8.8%. I could give you statistic, but you know where this is going. Hunger and food insecurity is a national disgrace, which is especially a national disgrace because we are the second richest country in the world, I discovered. It used to be we're number one, but the Chinese are now the richest nation in the world. Imagine a parent not being able to feed their child. No one that I know, I don't care what their politics are, conservative, liberal, it doesn't matter. No one that I know accepts the reality of this hunger with comfort. It's plainly morally wrong. But let's face it, addressing this issue as some personal obligation that all of us feel, as an ethical responsibility, is not always on our minds. We hear about it, but it's not always on our minds. We are distracted by life and are worried about other real challenges and needs. I had an eye-opening experience this morning. It is so mundane, but it ends up being so meaningful to me, and indulge me. My wife and I divide our pre-Shabbat grocery shoppings this week. We divided and conquered. She had a list and I had a list. I volunteered to go and get some food from Whole Foods. And as you know, Whole Foods have wonderful things, but they're very pricey. We are super blessed in our family. I mean, super blessed. We can shop every week for Shabbat, and we don't have to make a choice between food and some other important expenses in our family. Yes, we are cost conscious, as we should be, but for Shabbat we treat ourselves. This is an extraordinary blessing. Up to 811 million people, about 10% of the world's population, regularly go to bed hungry. How can I ever complain about my life? So I drive into the parking lot of Whole Foods, and on the grass, there's a woman with a child and a carriage. And she's got this sign, and she's expressing the facts that she needs support. I park my car, and I look at her saying to myself, should I go over to her immediately and give her money? Should I ask about her life? Then I said to myself, let me go into the store. When I come out, I'll put my groceries in the car, and then I'll go over to her. My shopping experience took on an entire new meaning. Everything that I bought seemed like an extravagance. Okay, here's my shopping list. This is the Torah portion for this week. I'm not going to, Bobby, you're not going to hear everything that I purchased, but I'm going to give you a couple of things. Okay. We bought Atlantic cod fillets. The price is $14.99. It cost us $25.48. Let me give you another indulgence. Then, Blueberries, 18 ounces. They charge $8.99 for that, but I had a discount and they took off $2.70. It's still an extraordinary amount of money for some blueberries. So all this happened. You don't need to see my shopping list. I went to the self-service and to check it out. I checked out, and what was the total? $108.22. For not that much food. And then my ethical dilemma intensified. Alan, you've been quite generous to yourself on this Erev Shabbat. Things are quite good for you, aren't they? You and Jane have 2 jobs. You're not worrying about paying for your Shabbat dinner. What about the lady outside? What are you going to do for her? And I decided, well, tithing is good. I'll give her 10%. So Alan, you need to go over to her and give her no less than $10. And $20 would be better. So I left the store. Headed towards my car, ready for the mitzvah of feeding the poor, and she had disappeared. What had I done? What had I not done? I had squandered an opportunity to do a sacred deed. In Isaiah 58, verse 7, God commands us to share our bread with the hungry and bring the homeless into our house. In the Midrash to Psalm 118, verse 17, when you are asked in the world to come, what was your work? And you answer, I fed the hungry, you will be told, this is the gate of the Lord. Enter into it, you who have fed the hungry. Perhaps she was never there, and it was Elijah revealing himself and testing me. What happened to me is such a stumbling block for our pursuit of righteousness. I put off doing a mitzvah. I intended to do it, but I delayed 20 minutes and it disappeared. Our rabbis teach us that when one intends to do a mitzvah, a commandment, he should do it without delay. They have a beautiful saying that makes this point. Mitzvah haba liyatcha al taksmitzena. And literally what it means is, if an opportunity to perform a mitzvah presents itself to you, do not be slow in performing it. We know that to bake matzah on Pesach, you need to leave it in the oven up to 18 minutes. If you delay and leave it in longer than 18 minutes, it ferments and becomes chametz. It's unfit for the Passover consumption. Rabbinic sages similarly tell us that although you have the best intentions to do a mitzvah, don't delay, for you may likely end up not doing it altogether. The rabbis of the Talmud did not study psychology at the university. They nevertheless understood the human being, the human mind, human nature. They cautioned us to be aware that the road to hell is often paved with good intentions. Friends, I missed the mitzvah. I delayed, and thus did not live up to my own religious aspirations. This is not something that only has to do with giving tzedakah. How often an apology is necessary and we delay it. How often we meet to offer words of encouragement, and we fail to do it. How frequently we want to tell people that they're loved, and we never get around to doing it in the right time. And sometimes it's too late. How often a compliment is needed but not given soon enough. How so very human to pledge that we make an important change and we put it off. How many people think about bringing food for our JFS food collection bin outside and just don't do it and say, later we'll do it. There are so many things in life that need our attention. Certainly that hungry woman. And I delayed, and the opportunity vanished. Let this rabbinic teaching, if an opportunity to perform a mitzvah presents itself to you, do not be slow in performing it. Let that guide us as we try to live lives of meaning, of consequence, and compassion. Shabbat shalom.